Yesterday, we have looked at what is a project work, or what do we mean when one says a project work. We've looked at the definition of a project work. We have also looked at what goes into project work. We've went ahead and then we have looked at the structure of a project work. We went ahead and then we have looked at the scope of a project work, and we started looking at the structure. We started breaking down the structure of the project work, starting from the proposal, and then we ended on the chapter 1. We said project work is a series of activities that allow students to study or to undertake a study or research by themselves or in groups using their abilities, interests, and their personal experience. And project work is done under a guidance of a supervisor, a mentor, a teacher, or an advisor. And then we went ahead and looked at what a good project work must contain. We said it must contain the title page, the abstracts, the introduction, the scope, on and on and on and on. So those were the things we have looked at. Then when it comes to the scope or the structure of a project work, we said the very first thing you have to do for every project work or for every research work is that you have to do or write your proposal. You have to write your proposal. That is what we said yesterday. And we've looked at what a proposal is and what it entails. Yesterday, we said the proposal is what you are going to use to enthuse the reader, or that is what you give to your supervisor before he or she will say, yes, go ahead. The proposal is like a business plan of whatever business you want to undertake. So the research plan is the proposal. So once the proposal is accepted, the research can start. We went ahead and we looked at the background of a proposal or the structure of a proposal. And so the proposal has a background, it has a problem statement, it has the research objectives, research questions, literature review, and then a brief methodology. Simple and short. We said the proposal should cut across or should encompass your chapter 1 to chapter 3. And that is what we looked at yesterday. And we end by saying that the proposal must always be written in the future. So you write the proposal in the future tense. I will do this. I would like to do this. I will be doing this, in that order. That is how the proposal is written. Then we went ahead and looked at the very first chapter of a project work. That is the chapter 1. We said the chapter 1 entails the introduction, or the chapter 1, which is the introduction, entails the background of the study, entails the problem statements, the objectives, the research questions, the research methodology, the scope, the significance, the limitation, and then the organization of the study or the outline of the study. Now, the difference between the proposal and the chapter 1 is that the proposal is in the future. The chapter 1, the tenses are in the past. So when you take out the literature review and the methodology from the proposal, that is your chapter 1, and change the tenses into the past, you've got in the chapter 1. And we went into read details, and then we have explained it into detail. So those videos, I'll upload them on the YouTube page for you. Then you watch them to get enough understanding on what we did yesterday. So this is just a brief recap on what we looked at yesterday. Now, the chapter 2 of the research, or the chapter 2 of a project work, is often called, or is called, the literature review. You will see in some books they'll write review of related literature. It is the same thing. Now, the literature review entails an introduction, the conceptual review, the theoretical review, and then the empirical review. Now, the literature review is a summary of what existing scholars know about a particular topic. So, scholars before you, scholars ahead of you, what they know about the topic, what they have said about the topic you are researching on, is what is called the literature review. It is always based on what? Secondary data. So the chapter 2 is purely a secondary data affair. I usually call it the look and say chapter. It is the chapter that you are going to look on somebody's work and also say something. Whatever you are saying over there is as a result of what somebody has also said, what somebody has proposed, or what somebody has found out on a particular topic. That is basically what it meant by literature review. Now, the literature review must also focus on relevant academic literature, especially popular academic sources and recognized experts in that field. You don't just go and quote anybody at all. You quote people who are recognized, people who are well known, people who are in that field. You cannot be writing about accounting, a topic on accounting, and you go and be quoting what a doctor has said, what a nurse have said about accounting. This person is not in the field, so he cannot substantiate whatever he or she will be saying concerning the field of accounting. If it is medicine, this person can substantiate whatever he or she is saying. Now, the literature review reviews major scholarly books in these relevant areas. Journals, articles, papers, research papers, books, on and on and on and on. That is what the entire literature review is about. So That is what the introduction must capture. Your introduction should tell us what you are about to do, areas you would like to touch on, and what we are to expect from your chapter 2. That is what your introduction must tell us. Now, when we talk of conceptual review, what do we mean? Now, the conceptual review represents a conceptual framework of the literature on how to examine a circumstance. The conceptual review identifies the action needed during the study, given the previous knowledge of other authors' point of view. Now, the conceptual review tells you the conceptual framework in which you do analysis of several variations and contexts. Mr. A said this, Mr. B said that, Mr. A said this, Mr. B said that. Given this situation, Mr. C also said this. So you are talking about different opinions. It's like we have been blindfolded and we are to identify the elephant. Where you hold of the elephant, you are going to describe it as such. So what all of them have said, you caption it over there. Now you must take notes that a strong conceptual framework captures something real, and you must always apply this whenever you are dealing with the conceptual review. So as I said, you see it in some books, conceptual review or conceptual framework. Are you getting it? Now, you guys are supposed to take notes that developing your conceptual review or your conceptual framework needs more reading and understanding of theories, which justify the relationship between the variables within which you are undertaking the research. If you don't read, you cannot make a strong case. If you don't do a lot of reading, a lot of analysis, you cannot make a strong case. And so therefore, reading is key when it comes to building your conceptual framework. Now, the making of a conceptual framework is a repetitive process. And this means that as one engages in thesis or project writing, he or she becomes more familiar with the chosen topic. So at the end of the day, it is constant reading that will help you. And you must also know that the building blocks you are building or you are putting across in the conceptual framework must be logically presented, and they must be connected to logical concepts that aid in providing visual demonstration. Whatever you are saying must create a picture in the mind of the reader. Yesterday, I told you that anybody that picks your work, the very first introduction the person reads, the person must be able to read the second paragraph. If the person reads the first paragraph and he or she stops, then it means that there's a problem with the first paragraph. The writing of a research work should be like a telenovela. The person shouldn't stop at each and every paragraph. The moment he stops the next paragraph, he must be waiting to read the next paragraph. That is how you are going to structure your conceptual framework. Now, The theoretical review is the next subtopic under the literature review. After you are done with the conceptual review, you come to your theoretical review. Now, the theoretical review is basically about you examining theories, examining principles, definition of terms, laws, rules, and regulations governing the subject matter in question. Now, the theoretical review's importance in the work is that it assists you as a researcher in establishing what theories exist in the field of study or in the field within which you are undertaking the study, and the relationship between these existing theories and to what extent these theories have been examined, to develop, and to also test new hypotheses. Because take note, in your chapter 1, you are also going to state your hypothesis over there. Okay, whether you have your null hypothesis or whatever, you state all the hypotheses over there. And so therefore, the theories will be examined at this particular point in time, and we are going to link them to our hypothesis to see how they have related to this hypothesis of ours. And most of the times, theoretical review is utilized in order to set up a lack of befitting theories or uncover the actual or already existing theories. Now, we can do our theoretical reviews from books, articles, journals, and other sources that are important, which we considered it important to contribute to our study. So at this point in time, you read, I told you this chapter is a look and say chapter. So at the end of the day, if you don't read, there is no way you are going to get the information. If you don't read, there is no way you are going to get the answer you need for the work. If you don't read, there is no way you are going to build a strong case, or there is no way you are going to build any logical, you are going to do any logical analysis. Now, at the end of the day, you should be able to know that the theoretical review is the blueprint of the entire research. When we say the theoretical review is the blueprint of the entire research, it means that whether your conclusion is going to be A or your conclusion is going to be B is based on the theoretical review. So at the end of the day, if you are concluding the work in chapter 5 and you are unable to tell us which of the theories is your work going with, or which of the theories is your work confirming, then it means that your work is disjointed. And so therefore, the work you are going to be undertaking, you make sure chapter 1 is intact, it has been accepted. You build the chapter 1, the chapter 2 on the chapter 1. You build the chapter 3 on the chapter 2. You build the chapter 4 on the chapter 3 in that order. And so therefore, if you don't do the work very well, and you get to chapter 5 and you have to make any correction in chapter 2, it affects chapter 3, it affects chapter 4, and affects chapter 5 as well. So the more you go, the careful you become, because if they have to change something backwards, it's going to affect the ones you have already done. And so therefore, the theoretical review is the blueprint of the entire research. And what does a blueprint do? It guides us and helps us in conducting the study and giving us the structure to define how we are going to use philosophy, we are going to use methodology, how we are going to use analytical approach in this work. So at the end of the day, you must make sure your theoretical review is intact. Once your theoretical review is intact, you are also assured of a very strong conclusion. Now, the empirical review. The empirical review or the empirical study is a knowledge-based field of every study. Now, when we are talking about empirical review, this is where we are going to talk about facts and figures. What you are talking or what you are saying must be backed by facts. If you are not backing it by facts, you are not saying anything. The empirical review looks at the original research of somebody's work and what were the findings of the person, what were the conclusions of the person, what were the recommendations made by the person. That is basically what the empirical review looked at. The empirical review looked at past studies on the topic. It can look at studies between 1990 and the year 2000. You can also look at studies between the year 2000 and 2010. Can look at current studies, let's say between 2010 and 2017 or 2018. The empirical review also can also look at studies in, let's say, the developed world and then studies in the developing world. The empirical review looked at studies across the whole world, but in categories. So as I say, this side of the research examines the general response of the text, mostly through means like media, such as literary text and theoretical performance, and so on. The empirical review is based on experimentation and observation. That is evidence. Without evidence, the empirical review is hollow. Now, the empirical review, as I told you, deals with the original research. And so therefore, it means that it is based on observation, experience, and also evidence. The empirical evidence is information acquired by observation and experimentation. So if you don't have facts, you can't do this. Take notes. The empirical review is the process of finding empirical evidence. And as I told you, empirical evidence is information acquired by observation and experimentation. And empirical research is the process of finding empirical evidence. And what is that empirical evidence? It is empirical data. And this empirical data is the information that comes from the research. So I've stated three variables over here, or three terminologies over here: empirical evidence, empirical research, and empirical data. The evidence is based on the research. The research is also based on the data you are getting. So these three terminologies, you don't forget them. Now, identifying empirical evidence is another researcher's experiment, which is quite difficult, but you should be able to do it. Now, The empirical studies is based on observed phenomena and knowledge from actual experience rather than from theory or belief. Description of the process utilized in order to learn these phenomena, considering selection criteria, controls, and testing instruments. And so therefore, your empirical review must be based on solid empirical data, solid empirical research, and a solid empirical evidence. Now, after all said and done, the very last thing you do in the chapter 2 is to look at your summary. You summarize the entire chapter 2 in one bit. Yes, boss. Rose is in.